Welcome to the Powerful Marketing Tips Podcast, created for overwhelmed business owners who want to build, run, and organize their marketing for good. And here's a brief overview of our guest. How to become a recognized authority in your field. This is the multi-million-dollar question that every business owner would like answers to, am I right? Well, we're about to find out how. Today's guest, Alastair McDermott, helps invisible experts remove their cloak of invisibility and become the recognized authorities in their fields to have more impact and command higher fees. Alastair is an author, consultant, and business coach who hosts the Recognized Authority podcast and the Specialized podcast. If you're looking for actionable tips on how to niche down and position your expert business, then this is definitely the podcast for you.
As a business owner, we all wish to get better clients and to, of course, earn higher fees and really become an authority in our industry. And this is why I am very excited about the topic we are going to dive into today, how to increase your impact and work with better clients. I am very honored to welcome you to our podcast, Alastair McDermott. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. But before we get started, please walk us briefly through your journey so our listeners can get to know you better.
Okay, sure. So what I do now is I help business owners, in particular small business owners, independent consultants, experts in their field. I help them to become known as experts. So I help them to build their authority. And I found this because it was something that was frustrating me myself. Early on in my business, I was doing, first off, I started off doing search engine optimization, and I started building websites as well because I've been doing that for a long time. But what I found was that when I tried to build my own authority and become known for something, that I was way too generic. I was way too general with what I was doing. And I was trying to create content, blog posts and podcasts, but I didn't have any specific audience in mind. And if you had come to me as a potential client back then, what you would have found was that I had a menu of services that was like the menu that you'd find in a restaurant. There was so many different options on there. I could do everything for everybody. But the problem is when you're doing everything for everybody, you really are nothing for nobody. So when I was writing blog posts, I found that they were really bland. And then I started to plan a podcast. And what I found was that I love podcasts, but I found this really difficult to do. I found it really difficult to plan the podcast. And in fact, it took me 7 years from originally wanting to start a podcast to actually launching. And that's how hard it was and how much difficulty I had. And so I realized eventually that specialization was something that I needed to focus on. I needed to specialize and niche down my business. And when I came to that realization, it took me a while to implement it, and I needed to get some help from a business coach. But eventually I niched down, and everything became so much easier because I felt like it kind of unlocks a whole lot of different things. And so that's what took me up to where I am now, where I'm a kind of an advocate of specialization, and I love the concept of people building their own authority. Becoming known as a recognized authority in their field, because I think it's such a great way to do marketing. It's such a pleasant way to do marketing because it's not hard selling. It's just a really nice way to, because what you're doing typically is you're teaching and you're helping people.
Mm-hmm. That's very inspiring journey, I would say, because we all know, from marketing point of view, that if you try to reach everybody, you end up actually talking to nobody.
Yeah, so it's very frustrating when you're like, back then I had a whole range of different types of clients. For my web design business, I had a mining company and I had a retirement planning company. I had a financial manager. I had a magician for children's birthday parties. I had an e-commerce store that sold skin cream. I had an e-commerce store that sold children's and women's clothes. And so when you're trying to write a blog post that gives all of these companies advice about their marketing, that blog, it just becomes so bland because you're trying to make it apply to everybody, and it just doesn't work.
Wow, there were truly many things you did.
Yeah, and it was just very frustrating, and like I know what it's like being there. And the other thing that was difficult for me at the time was I was actually helping these businesses with their marketing. And for example, for the clothing companies, I was able to help them do Facebook ads, and that was very effective for them. And I was really frustrated. Why can I not do this for myself, but I can do it for my clients? What's going on here? Like, what's different? And like that really bothered me. That was very upsetting. And so I kind of got annoyed with myself, and I started trying to figure it out. And that's when I realized that for this type of business where you have an expert service, that authority marketing is kind of the version of online marketing for us, because it's hard to run Facebook ads and things like that for our type of business. And so that's what led me down the road of helping people to build their authority.
Well, I'm glad you figured that out, because now we can talk about authority, or as I love to think about it, the power of influence. So you mentioned already focus here, niching down, but is that the first step, or where should we start?
Yeah, so I see the journey to authority, like I literally picture it as a journey, and it's a winding road that people take. And when we start out, we're typically now this is very much focusing on people who are experts and kind of experts in their field. It mightn't apply so much to consumer products and things, but maybe there's an aspect that we can talk about later. But for those expert businesses, typically we're going to start out as a novice, and it doesn't reflect on how smart you are. You can be very, very smart, but everybody starts as a novice in their field. And you go and get broad experience, and you spend some time learning. You kind of develop your voice, and so you follow like this winding path at the start, which is getting experience. And at some point you end up as this expert. And typically I see that people right at that point, they're generalist experts. So they're really good at a lot of different things. But at that point, they're invisible. So most of their business is coming from word of mouth and from referrals and from their network. And the issue is, if you're not big into networking, or you're not very good at networking, if you're not good at asking for referrals, then that can be very difficult at that point. But you can also be very successful. Now, most people will actually stop there. They'll continue to work on their network, but they won't take the next step in building their authority, which is actually to niche down. So if you think about the recognized authority, the phrase, the recognized authority in their field, that's a really important part. And you actually have to choose a field. You have to niche down if you want it to become an authority. You have to be known for something. And that's the difficult part, because when you're niching down, you're actually turning away opportunity. Like, you were making a conscious decision to turn away some opportunity. Actually, you're making a conscious decision to turn away most opportunity in order to say a bigger yes to a small subset of that. And that's the really hard part, because our brain, our lizard reptilian brain, is screaming at us, danger, danger, don't do this. And it's telling us not to move forward with specializing. And that's the really hard part, because if you want to build your authority and become known as an expert, you have to choose something. And so, but if you can pass through that step, then what you can do is you can start to create a body of work. You can start to do things like doing research and writing, and you can publish a book, you can start a podcast, you can have all of this because you have that focus, and you're able to create this kind of authority body of work, authority content that then helps you to become known, to a wider audience.
That's very good. And I'd like to talk about saying no, because this is, I think, crucial here. As a small business owner, it is very hard to say no. because because it really feels like you're being harmful to your business even.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the most important things that we can learn. Like, we should have, it should be the case that, particularly when we're working with clients on an engagement. So it's different if we're selling somebody a product and there's no engagement. If you're selling somebody a bar of chocolate or a pair of shoes, it's a transaction and there's no engagement afterwards. You don't have to continue to work together. But if there is a thing where you have to work with somebody, and so you're going to be entering a relationship, then I think you've got to be a bit more picky about who you accept as a client. You should not accept everybody, and you should be saying no. Some people are not going to be a good fit for you, and so you should have like a clear understanding of what makes for a good fit client and what makes for a bad fit client. And you should don't ignore red flags or warnings, and we've all done that, particularly early on when you need revenue, you just need to make sales. And so you accept a bad fit client, and 2 months later you're regretting it because of how much it's costing you in terms of time and energy, and you don't want to go to work that morning because you're going to be working a meeting with this client. We've all done that, we've all had that experience. But maybe you've got to get yourself to the place where you can afford to say no, and then you can become more choosy. The opportunity cost of saying yes is too much, so you got to say no so that you keep your free time for when the right fit client comes along, and then you can spend your time looking for those right fit clients.
I agree. That is crucial to really focus. But do you have any, I don't know, formula or ideas how to actually understand where to put your focus? Because as you just shared with us, there are so many things you were good at. How did you choose this one focus?
So there, I have actually I have a lot of free resources on this on my website. If you go to my website, therecognizedauthority.com, there's a Start Here button. And there's a bunch of free resources. You don't need to opt in or anything. It's all there. One of those is a workbook for specialization. And there's a few different exercises that I go through with people. And one of those is simply a spreadsheet to audit your existing clients. And so you can put all of your clients into this spreadsheet, and what you're looking to do is you're listing the value of the client, you're listing the type of project, the sector or industry that they're in, the head count of the client, and then anything else, any other patterns, anything else that you can look for to turn into a pattern, like maybe the service that you did. And then there's an important column, which is how much fun did you have working with that client? And rank as many of your existing clients as you can. Maybe go back 3-4 years if you have that much time in business. And what you're looking for is you're looking for patterns. Which are the clients that I liked working with the most? Which clients appreciated me the most? Which projects were the most interesting? And then so what you can do is you can say, well, I've noticed that it's usually the larger companies I like working with, or it's usually the family-owned businesses that I like working with, or it's usually people who have some relation to the dental sector because my dad was a dentist and I have a lot of connections in there. There's loads of different patterns and everybody's circumstances are going to be different. But what you're doing is you're auditing all of your past clients to try and figure out. So that's one exercise that I use. There's a couple more. I can talk about those if you want to, or if you want to talk about that a bit more, that's okay.
It sounds like a great tool already to me.
Yeah.
And also a fun tool to
Yeah,
to
it is.
with.
And I think it's important as well to, I think personally for me, fun in business is really important. I'm not all business all the time. And I don't think anybody is really, so for me, enjoying working with people is important. And so that's something like I rate that as I'd rather earn less money and work with people that I really like. And that's kind of, because then it's work is easier, So I think that it's really important to rate that factor in there. Another thing that you can do is skills, interests, and opportunities, which is a Venn diagram, 3 circles. And there's a Japanese version that has a 4th circle, which is what does the world need? And so what you can do is you can list all of your skills, all of the things that you're interested in or you like doing, and all of the opportunities or what pays well that you could do. And look for where those intersect. Another way of thinking about this is good love pays world. So what are you good at doing? What do you love doing? What pays really well? And what does the world need? And I like that version, good love pays world. And basically what you do is you can even map your clients onto this as well. Was it a high-paying client that you didn't like working with? Was it a high-paying client that you loved working with? Is it something that you're really good at? And so you can kind of analyze yourself, and you can analyze your clients as well. And that's just 3 or 4 circles, Venn diagrams overlapping. So that's another tool that's really good.
That's a great tool. I have used Ikigai, for personally, but I've never thought about, working with that in terms of my clients, who are my clients.
And I can't pronounce the Japanese word Ikigai. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Ikigai. I believe so. It is Ikigai. I'm not sure.
So I always remember that as Good Love Pays World, just because it's like a mnemonic. Yeah. So the other tool that I use sometimes with people is it's a blank book. And so the question for them is, let's imagine that in 3 years' time, you've written a best-selling book around your area of expertise. So what would the title and subtitle of that book be? What would you like that to be? And it's just a kind of like a thought experiment, and if you're not into writing books, imagine it's a podcast, or imagine that it's the signature speech that you're giving as a keynote at a conference. So, and just try and figure out, what would that be if I was really into writing about something and wanted to do that? And so that's just another kind of hypothetical experiment. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to find patterns. We're trying to figure out, where is there a market that I would enjoy working with, where somebody has a painful, expensive problem that I can help to solve.
So do you have any stories to share with us? I mean, you work closely with those, business owners out there who want to become an authority, and if they go through those spreadsheets or tools with you, how do you see, if they're going on the right direction, or when do you know if this direction for them is right or not?
Yeah, well, so first thing I'd say about this is, when you make a specialization decision, the instant feeling that you're going to have is that it's the wrong decision. That is
Why?
Guaranteed, because your brain, our brains just do this to us. It's cruel what they do. They immediately tell us, no, this is wrong. So you've got to, I like to approach it like it's a test campaign. Jonathan Starr calls it a campaign. Philip Morgan says, look, imagine this is like a beachhead. There's a guy called Chris Do I interviewed on my podcast recently, and he said, what do we lead with? And so approaching this as, this is a test. We're just testing this concept, and we're going to see, and if it doesn't work, we can change. And I know two people, both women, who have picked the wrong specialization and have turned back and done U-turns and gone and picked something else and gone on to be very successful. Both of those have been on my podcast, actually. One of those is Sarah Dunn. And she was a web designer doing everything, and a bit like I was. And one day she went for a sales meeting. She had a great meeting, and she gave the proposal to the client. And then the client came back to her a week later and said, look, we're going to go with my niece who's just graduated from a night course in web design. And so Sarah was like, how could I be in this situation where I have 6 or 7 years of experience in my field, I'm an expert, and I'm losing a project to somebody who's done 20 hours of training in this. And like, how could I not have differentiated myself enough? Like, that's the frustrating thing as a generalist. And so she lost that particular project, but that was probably a good thing, because it gave her a kick to move and start to specialize. And, but she told me that she picked initially, she started working with chiropractors, and she started working on Facebook ads for chiropractors as a specialization. And she found that she didn't like the work. She didn't like chiropractors, and she didn't like Facebook ads. And so she changed what she was doing, and she started doing search engine optimization for wedding planners. And so, and again, it's like this quite specific thing. But now Sarah is number one in the world for SEO for the wedding industry, because because there was nobody else just focusing on that one industry for that one thing. So
that's a great story.
You can pick the wrong thing and turn back. And you just need to figure it out. And it is a test. It's a test campaign, and you experiment. And that's what we do in businesses, is we run small tests all the time. And it's not really failing, it's just learning that something doesn't work and try something else.
Of course, I just wanted to say that it's totally okay to do mistakes. This is where we learn the best.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
and I actually ask every podcast guest that I have on my podcast. I ask them if there's a business mistake that they can tell us about or a business failure, and every one of them has many. And in fact, the most successful people have the most failures and mistakes in their past. So it's normal.
Of course, it is very normal. So what are other, let's say, stages or steps, on this journey?
Yeah, so the main steps for me are, everybody starts out as a novice. You go on to become this invisible expert. And then the path ahead of you goes through a mountain range. And that mountain range is specialization. And a lot of people don't want to do that because it's a perilous, dangerous path, or so it looks. And also the other thing about that is you need a guide, somebody to help you. And that guide could be a business coach. It could be a mastermind group. It could be a friend. It doesn't really matter, but you do need to get some external perspective on this, particularly because our reptilian brain, our crocodile that's sitting at the back of our head says, hey, this, don't do this. But if you can get through that mountain range and make a specialization decision, the next stage is where you're this specialist. Now, at that point, you haven't built up a big audience. You're not known as an authority, but you will automatically start to find that things get better in your business. Usually because you're focusing on one problem, it allows you to create these economies and efficiencies in your business. And it makes working with clients much easier because usually you're working on the same type of problem with the same type of client. If you work with subcontractors, you're probably working with less subcontractors because you don't need as many, because you're not doing as many different things. And what you'll find is that you start to get this deep insight and this deep level of knowledge, this deep expertise that you wouldn't have had if you didn't focus, if you didn't niche down, if you didn't specialize. And so, and that part is really valuable. And and usually you start to get some of your time back because you just get faster and faster at doing the thing that you're doing now because you're doing it more often. So that's the next stage is this specialist. And then the next stage after that is when you start to learn from your specialization, you start to write about it or you start to publish, and maybe you do some research as well, and you start to actually write about your specialization. You start to build an audience, and you start to build your authority and start to become known as an authority in your field. So that's kind of the steps. So you go novice to invisible expert generalist, and then to specialist, and then to recognized authority.
It sounds only natural, this growth really. But
yeah, what's interesting for me is that a lot of people don't want to take those last two steps. And a lot of people want to get to the last step without taking the third step, the specialization part. But it's really difficult, if not just plain impossible, to become an authority in everything, or at least in a broad field. So you do need to have some level of specialization or niching down or choosing your field,
But why do you think they don't want to take this last step?
Well, because of that, the fear. There's just huge fear involved in the specialization step. And a lot of people think they're going to be bored. A lot of people think that they're going to pick the wrong thing. A lot of people think the market is just too small in that niche, and usually all of those things are not true. Like, what you find is that once you start to dig into a topic, even if it's a niche topic, there's usually a lot of really interesting stuff that other people don't know about that once you start to dig into it. And so you're probably not going to get bored. Almost certainly not going to get bored. You could pick the wrong thing, and that's unfortunate. You will have to turn back and start again and try and pick something else. But maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just get the right thing the first time. So, but you won't know until you try it.
I love how you emphasize the power of community or those mastermind groups or the help of the coach or having a mentor, because I think that's very important, because oftentimes we just need this perspective,
Yeah, David C. Baker wrote The Business of Expertise, And he has a quote in there, and I don't know if he's the originator of the quote, but he says, it's hard to read, or it's impossible to read the label from inside the jar. And that's the thing. We need that external perspective, you know. We need to have somebody pointing out to us. And like for me, for a long time, that was my former business partner, who I'm really good friends with. And we have a call every 2 weeks where we talk business. And so we both have this peer support. And also I'm a member of some masterminds. And now actually I'm running a group program. So it's, you know, you just have to find, like, the only place I would say don't get support from is from your family, because your family will either be way too supportive or way too negative, and that depends on your family. And everybody will know which of those their own family is. But you know, you need somebody who's willing to tell it to you straight, you know.
I know, and that's so true. You know, people we love the most, and we cannot actually take advice from them, because sometimes they are also too afraid. You know. Yeah,
or they're too close, and they're like, part of this is educated risk taking. Like that's part of what we're doing here, and so you want to make it an educated risk, but if you don't take any risk, that's worse than taking no risks, because the only thing that will guarantee failure is to take no risks.
Yeah, just stay home. That's it. So if you were to now wrap it up here to our listeners today, you know, the 4 steps, it sounds very easy when you talk about that, but in real life, it really takes some time. So should we start from the tool you mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah, so so I have an assessment on my website which will tell people which stage they're at. And so you can go to the recognizedauthority.com and you'll find it on there. There's a button that just says start here. And if you go there, there's a load of free resources. And so one thing, you know, you may know which of those stages you're at. But to get to each stage, there's a clear progression. So if we're at the novice stage, then to go to the next stage, all we need to do is get experience. And so we just need to go and get that broad experience. If we're at the generalist stage and we want to go to specialist, then we need to niche down, we need to specialize. So that's the action that you need to take. And if you're a specialist, you've already gone through that stage and you want to get to the top, which is the recognized authority stage, then what you need to do is publish. And publishing and speaking and research kind of all goes together there. Now, you can also publish. There's nothing to say you can't publish at those earlier stages as well. And so, like, usually people, you have to have something to say. Like, one thing that you can do if you're at the novice stage is you can journal about what you're doing. You can just talk about what you're experiencing right now and what you're thinking. And even at the generalist stage, you can kind of start to get better and better at publishing and writing and making videos or whatever means you do. But the publishing really comes into its own when you get to the specialized stage, because you have this focus for your content. And that's when it starts to get really interesting for an audience, because you're writing about a topic that they care about, and you're writing about it from this position of expertise, and it's much more interesting for people.
Yep, I agree with you. We also have our own mastermind for small business owners internationally, and I really see that it helps a lot. So again, thank you for emphasizing, you know, a community and people around us, because I think that's crucial. And of course, this confidence also comes with the time and with the practice, right? To grow and to become an authority in your industry.
Yeah, and like I think that the publishing part, it's a bit like swimming. We can read as much as we want about swimming, but until you get in the water, you won't actually learn how to swim. and so you can read 40 books on learning how to swim, but unless you get in the water, nothing's going to happen. And I think that's the same thing with the publishing part. You've got to kind of develop that voice. You got to find your voice, figure out, you know, like I like podcasting. And I was talking to one of my clients last night, and she doesn't like podcasting at all. She doesn't listen to podcasts, but she's really comfortable making videos and getting on video. But for her, podcasts no interest at all. And so people are different, you know. Some people really love writing long form blog posts. One of my guests on the podcast, Tom Critchlow, he developed his business and was very successful because he was blogging. And so for everybody, it's different. But just figure out what's the channel or the medium that you like to use, and then just start publishing and start talking about your area of expertise, and you will learn as you go as well.
So that's great. Please tell us, where can they connect with you, you know, if they want to do that? Of course, we will put all the links next to this episode here.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can find everything that we mentioned, that we talked about, if you go to therecognizedauthority.com. And it doesn't matter how you spell the recognized the American way or the UK way. But therecognizedauthority.com, and click on Start Here. You'll get a whole bunch of free stuff. And you can sign up for the email list if you want to. You don't have to. There's nothing is gated. And you're welcome to download the spreadsheet that I mentioned, the audit tool. There's actually a link to the spreadsheet as well. So if you have Google Sheets, you can just go in there and make a copy, and you can start filling in your details.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for your time and for those thoughts. It's been very inspiring. And last but not the least, please share a comment on a song and a quote that you have chosen for our community.
Yeah, so the quote is from a friend of mine, Guillaume Viatra, and Guillaume has been on my podcast, and but he's somebody I've known for a long time. We worked on specialization and building authority together as well. But his quote is, "I don't write because I have ideas. I have ideas because I write." Now, I don't know if he's the originator of this quote, but I think he might be, because I've done some searches and I can't find it from anybody else. But the concept of I'm not publishing because I'm getting ideas. I'm getting ideas because I'm publishing. I think that's really important, because people don't want to put their ideas out there. Like, I don't have enough to say. You will have more to say once you start to write and think about these things. It doesn't have to be writing, but writing helps because it helps us to formulate our ideas. And most things come from writing anyway. Like typically, if I'm doing a solo podcast episode, I'll be writing an outline. If I do a video on YouTube, I'll be writing an outline for that. And so it all comes from the writing part, which kind of helps us to sort our ideas, and it makes those connections. So I think the writing part is really important. But even if you worry that you don't have ideas, you will have plenty of ideas. That part won't be hard once you start to do it. And so I think it's inspiring for me about the concept of publishing, and saying don't hold back because you're afraid that you won't have the ideas for it. Just start doing it.
Yeah, just start doing that. That is inspiring. And what about the song?
Yeah, for the song. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's technically a song. I picked Energy 52 from Cafe Del Mar, and Cafe Del Mar from Energy 52, because that's one of my favorite songs from when I was younger. And what I like about that kind of dance trance music is that it's just really positive and uplifting. And it makes me happy when I listen to that kind of music. And also, it's the kind of music you can work to, you can put on in the background. There's no lyrics, it's just it can play in the background, and it just gives me energy. So I like that. I sometimes put that type of music on while I'm working, including when I'm writing.
Yeah, that is a great song, by the way, and I love that it doesn't have lyrics, because it really helps you, while you need to focus on something. And for example, when you are writing, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So thank you, Alastair. It's been great discussion here, and we really appreciate your thoughts and insights here. It's been very useful.
Well, Marlies, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you you bringing me on and letting me talk to you and your audience.
It's our honor. Thank you.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Powerful Marketing Tips Podcast. Make sure to link up with us at our free monthly international mastermind event. Just go to powerful-marketers.com/mastermind for registration. And one thing that would really help us and other new potential listeners is if you would rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in to listen. Until next time, take care.